Welcome into the weather review. I am meteorologist Gavin White, and I'm emphasizing that because I am now graduated. Now, it's been a quiet couple of weeks. Life's been busy, but it's calmed down and the weather has picked up. So we're going to jump right on into this. It's been a very active end to the week here, Thursday and Friday. Monster storm system working through the Midwest of the United States. If you're from the Midwest, you're very, very well aware of the impacts. If you're not, you probably saw on the news, and if not, you're about to find out right now. Terrible event, tornado outbreak, dust storm in Chicago. It's quite the entourage of things going on that we're going to dissect a little bit. So some of the numbers here, and this is as of Saturday night when I'm recording this, there are at least 27 deaths as reported by ABC News, and 51 tornado reports between Thursday and Friday. However, I'm choosing to focus primarily on Friday's event. That was the more severe event. That's when these 27 deaths took place. 26 of those 51 tornado reports occurred on Friday, and I think that's an underrepresentation. I think that number is going to go up as more storm surveys are conducted. Taking a look synoptically at the synoptic setup with what was occurring leading up to this event and what really encouraged it and why it was the way it was. This is 8 a.m. on Friday. If you're watching this, if you're listening, I'm going to do my best to describe this. We had this low pressure system in the upper Midwest. It was occluded. That's what this purple line here is, an occluded front, meaning the cold front had caught up to the warm front. So there's not really a whole lot going on here. Maybe some leftover stratiform rain, but that's about it. This right here would be where we would expect to see some kind of weather. However, it was pretty calm here. Maybe a little bit of rain, and that was about it, because the bulk of our event was further back in the Midwest. So as we advance here throughout the day, on Friday, we can see how the surface low evolved. What ended up occurring was the occlusion continued to wrap around the low. However, a secondary low pressure kind of formed off of that parent low and was present kind of in the southern, southeastern Wisconsin area along Lake Michigan. And the secondary low pressure, according to this map that I'm looking at, was down to 989 at the time that this thing was identified as a separate low from its parent. It has its cold front, it has its warm front, and it's this tight little region here. So we see this cold front here is the primary forcing mechanism for this storm. The second one back here, so it's nice, cool temperatures ushering in behind it. But this is the primary forcing mechanism that allowed a lot of these storms to initiate. This warm front, however, is what was some of that. There was some precipitation early in the morning that cleared out, and that was associated with what ended up being identified as this warm front later on in the day. But this is that primary region here between the fronts is where severe weather would be most likely to occur, especially rotating severe weather, because everything south of the warm front is blowing from south to north up until the cold front comes through and changes the wind direction. So you kind of get some natural rotation in there as that cold front comes through, which is why it's key and why we tend to see, especially in the springtime, a lot of tornadic systems is associated with that quick change in the wind. And this is right along where the bulk of that dangerous weather was occurring, it from St. Louis, stretching across Illinois and going down into Kentucky as this advanced throughout the course of that day and night Friday. And it just takes over, becomes very strong, and it itself ends up occluding early on Saturday morning when we stop caring about it. Additionally, looking aloft here as we're trying to put together the synoptic picture of what's going on. We know the cold front's the primary forcing mechanism. However, it's not the only thing that's at play. We did have some jet streaks as well. And now jet streaks are little localized areas of intense wind within the jet stream. So this is a representation of about 8 a.m. on Friday. Again, we can see this initial parent low. It's occluded at this time. You can't really see. That's what this is right here, is its occlusion. However, to its south, there's a jet streak, this little localized area of intense wind speeds within the jet stream. And typically what we would expect is the right side of where that jet streak starts and the left side of where that jet streak ends. So the right entrance region and the left exit region are going to be favored areas for severe weather, for convection. That's typically where there's mass divergence aloft. A lot of air is moving away from that area, and as a result, air is to come from below. Air is naturally rising under those areas, which is going to help generate storm conditions. So In this particular example, there's a right entrance region in eastern Nebraska, left exit region in Minnesota, another right entrance region in Arkansas going into Missouri. This is a strong corridor for storms. And then a left exit region on the Indiana-Ohio border. And that progressed, and the two separate jet streaks ended up kind of combining into one massive one. The right entrance in Arkansas, left exit in Michigan. But this was after the storm had kind of progressed, and it was more so favoring a little bit southward of here. It's not the best representation, I don't think, of what it actually looked like, but it definitely played a part. That combination of that cold front and then the positioning of the jet streak aloft kind of really helped the cold front helped to get air to start to moving. It helped to get air start to move, helped to make air start to move upward, while that jet streak aloft it needed air to fill its place. So that kind of combination is what kind of created this giant mass area going up. And that's kind of synoptically, big picture, what was taking place here. So there's a lot of upper level support in the form of a negatively tilted trough, which is more favorable for severe weather. A negatively tilted trough is going to be associated with low pressure at the surface. Low pressure is what's going to be associated with our severe storm outbreaks. That's low pressure systems are what brings weather on planet Earth. So that's just kind of a synoptic, big picture overview of kind of what was going on. What's the science behind what was going on? That's the science that was going on. Now, what actually occurred? It was like I said, it was a very devastating day. And I'm choosing to focus on Friday because that was where the bulk of the damage occurred. As I mentioned, St. Louis had a direct hit from a tornado. It was confirmed earlier today. Baltimore had a direct hit from a tornado. Did not make the news as compared to St. Louis and Chicago, or London, Kentucky, a small town in Kentucky, flattened. So we're gonna talk about all three of these, starting with St. Louis, going to London, and finishing with the Chicago dust storm that resulted from this. I know it's as crazy as it sounds. It's like we're in the 1930s again, Dust Bowl all over again. But starting here with St. Louis, there was a tornado within its beltway. So it was very densely populated area. It's not the downtown core. However, you're still within that centralized metro area. So it's dense suburbs, mid-rise area, in viewing range of downtown St. Louis. There's pictures from the arch looking at, you can see the storm that was producing the tornado, and just kind of the gray wall of rain where you can't see past, and the tornadoes within that, which is a pretty ominous image, actually. But this tornado, as of earlier on Saturday, was responsible for at least 4 deaths. Again, at the time of recording, it's been rated an EF3. At one point, the tornado itself was a mile wide. Again, so at the time of recording, that can very well change as they continue to conduct surveys throughout the weekend and into the early part of next week. But it was a very strong and a very big tornado, and it did a lot of damage. There was a video of the top floor of an apartment completely collapsing. Like the top floor of an apartment building, the roof lifted, and then the walls crashed in. It was a strong tornado. Well, it's a combination of it being a strong storm and then probably a pretty poorly built apartment building. It looked like a newer building, a quote-unquote luxury apartment building. Kind of shows you the quality of construction in 2025 right there. But that's not the only case. It's not just one case. I mean, there's widespread damage. Trees down, roofs are gone, brick walls have fallen over, some buildings are collapsed in on themselves. I mean, there's some serious damage in St. Louis from this tornado. It was warned, which is good. It was observed, which is going to help aid in the fact that it was warned. It ended up being upgraded. That warning ended up being upgraded to a particularly dangerous situation while it was still within the metro area. And that is a tag that the Weather Service can put on a tornado warning, in which it sends out that tornado warning again to everybody with the updated language. It's a particularly dangerous situation, and it's meant as another way of trying to get people to shelter. Usually you're going to see that when a tornado is observed or it's doing considerable damage in a populated area, such as the St. Louis metro area, which is a very populated area. So yeah, St. Louis, terrible. Quite unfortunate to see that, just truly devastating imagery coming out of it. But I think this reaffirms that whole notion that tornadoes can happen anywhere, even in the city. As we just saw in St. Louis, an EF3 at least tore through the very dense suburbs right next to downtown St. Louis. Absolutely terrible. More devastating damage, though, however, in London, Kentucky. Just completely heart-wrenching. Entire homes swept from their foundation. All that's left is just the slab that the home was built on in the first place. We had saw it on a satellite image this morning. The satellite imagery shows the damage scar from the tornado. You can see it on satellite, way up high above, which is incredible. It was an incredibly strong tornado. It was a very big tornado too. There's another image I saw of just this widespread path of destruction through the woods between two towns leading up to London, Kentucky. And it's just every tree within the region where that tornado was is just flattened on the ground. I mean, it was a big tornado and it was strong. I'm very curious to see what the ratings are when that comes out. But it's depressing, and it's very sad to see, especially because it was a nocturnal tornadoes, and nocturnal tornadoes are so much deadlier than any other than daytime tornadoes. And the reason why nocturnal tornadoes are so dangerous is the fact that they're at night. People are asleep. People either don't hear their phones go off when the warning goes out, or they do and they roll over or go back to bed because they're in bed. And so they don't take it seriously, or people are just discombobulated and just can't quite process in time to get themselves to shelter, which is, again, it's an unfortunate thing. It's very common in the South. You can see it kind of creeping up into Dixie Alley. And occasionally, in more recent years, in the eastern part of the Midwest, kind of getting into Appalachia, we've seen some of these nocturnal tornadoes. They're scary. They're scary, and that's exactly why they're so dangerous, because you can't see them, and then it's the fact people are asleep. People are less likely to shelter. What was nice about this particular tornado, there was a 30-minute lead time on the warning. The warning was issued a half hour before the tornado itself reached the town, so there was plenty of time for people to get into position if they heard their phones going off. However, quick little side note, the forecast area for London, Kentucky, it falls within the forecast area for the Weather Forecasting Office out of Jackson, which, due to budgeting concerns, is no longer fully staffed 24/7, just due to not having the personnel right now, and can't really hire new ones at this current time. However, it has been confirmed that for this particular weather night, it was an expected active weather night. They scheduled appropriately. They had a fully staffed office for that night, so it wasn't a concern. They were staffed that night, but it is a potential concern looking down the road, as some increasing number of National Weather Service offices aren't able to fully staff themselves during these severe weather outbreaks. It is concerning. However, in this particular case, it was staffed, and they had a 30-minute lead time on the warning, which they did their job flawlessly. And regardless, it still led to incredible devastation that you never want to see. It's pretty depressing. It's pretty depressing. So a lot of prayers going out to those in London, Kentucky, same with St. Louis and all these other towns that were hit by the 20-some-odd tornadoes that took place on Friday. Something I do want to take a quick little side tangent on. There was a dust storm in Chicago. There's a word you would never expect to hear. I'm going to overlay the video that I saw of it, satellite imagery that I saw of it, over me talking right now, because I don't have that queued up. But you can see it as there's this line of storms approaching from the west, and you see all this dust rushing northward towards Chicago. It was incredible. So I don't know for certain what exactly led to it. Based off the imagery that I saw, my hypothesis would be that it appears that there's this developing line of storms just to the west of where this dust storm is moving. From those storms, the gust front from the storms reaching out, which results from the downdraft within those storms hitting the ground and advancing ahead of the storm. That gust front was strong enough, and it moved ahead of those storms. It kicked up all this dirt and dust and whatever else was in pretty dry farm fields for this time of year. Picked up all that dirt and dust and got it agitated and kind of suspended in the air. At the same time, where this line of storms was developing is right along that cold front, right where that the winds are changing direction. So all this suspended dust and dirt that's in the air now, all of a sudden it's in this region where there's southerly wind. Wind is blowing out of the south and going to the north. So it's suspended, and then it's carried by the wind, which is going northward straight into Chicago. And you had a dust storm in Chicago, which is crazy. It's like the 1930s, like in the Dust Bowl. You had twisters and you had Dust Bowls going on in 2025. It's hard to believe. It's a very strange event, but it's kind of cool, and it's fascinating seeing how the weather, a line of thunderstorms, created a whole dust storm in one of the major cities in the Midwest. It's incredible. And the imagery is pretty breathtaking to see as well. It's just not something you would expect to see, which is why I wanted to touch base on it. Now, again, I don't know for certain if that's what led to the dust storm with that line of storms and their gust front coming off of those storms. However, that's my suspicion, is that either it was previous storms that kind of got stuff going, and then the gust front from those storms kind of got more stuff going, and then the wind just carried it northward. Or I don't really know what else it could be. That's just kind of the thing that makes the most sense in my brain right now. So that's why that's what I'm going with, and that's what I'm choosing to explain it as. But yeah, fascinating stuff with that dust storm around an overall very somber day of weather. Like I said, at least 27 people lost their life, which is a terrible tragedy. Never want to see people die, especially in severe weather, things that are outside of their control. It's a really sad thing to see. So yes, prayers for these towns that are impacted. Prayers for the families that lost loved ones. And it's unfortunate. It goes to show it doesn't matter. You can have all the warnings in the world, and people are still going to die in weather. It's an unfortunate reality that we have to live with, and it's unfortunate to see it happen, especially in an outbreak as was this past weekend. But choosing to look ahead here now that we have reviewed this weather system, we'll see what the weather looks like here this next week or two. However, I am kind of thinking in my brain here of doing a hurricane season preview next week on Memorial Day. Well, I would do it before then, but it would go out on Memorial Day. Hurricane season starts next month, June 1st, which is hard to believe now. We have to start turning gears from tornadoes to hurricanes, although we're going to still have some tornadoes going into June. But I'm curious. There's some cool things coming out of the National Hurricane Center. There's some updated some updated products that I want to discuss. And I just kind of want to do a general preview of the hurricane season, what we can kind of expect here. El Nino, La Nina, all that fun stuff. So you have that to look forward to next week, barring some crazy weather that decides to take place. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to listen. God bless and stay safe out there.